Hey there, Tad Hargrave from Marketing for Hippies, just sitting in front of the yurt on the land I'm on. And today's video is something I'm so excited to share. I'm going to be going into this much more in detail in a series of webinars, point of view marketing webinars coming up. But this is about the 3 cases. This is new. You might have been following me for 20 years and you haven't heard me say this one because it's just come to me. You have heard me say point of view marketing is important. And that when we do, let's say, an intro workshop, we're not fundamentally trying to make the case for them to hire us. We're trying to make the case for a perspective, for a point of view. We're not selling the course, we're selling the concept. We don't sell the program, we sell the perspective. We don't try to market ourselves, we just try to share this message, yeah? And so that's the basic idea. But when we talk about making a case, it struck me there are actually 3 cases. And again, I'm given a very shallow level, but I think it'll make sense for you. 3 cases that we need to make: diagnosis, prognosis, prescription. So the diagnosis, the first case we have to make is just what's happening. Yeah, they hear their car making a noise, but what's going on underneath the hood? They have a symptom, but what's the deeper diagnosis of what's actually going on to cause those symptoms? Because when they come to us, chances are they're very aware of the symptoms and maybe they suspect a diagnosis, but they don't really know, and that's why they're coming to us. You know, they've got some blind spots around the diagnosis. So that's the first thing. Second case we need to make is the case for what's coming. So again, diagnosis, what's happening. But the prognosis, this is what's coming. And this is where we make the case. Look, if you do what I say, here's what will happen. And if you don't, here's what's going to happen. That might sound like I'm suggesting fear tactics or some sort of coercion, but I'm not. What I'm not saying, if you don't work with me, here's what's going to happen. And if you do work with me, here's what's going to happen. I'm saying if you follow this approach, here's what's likely to come. And if you don't, here's the other thing that's likely to come. So this is a big deal because you do have opinions on this. You can pretend to be as horrified by this as you like, but you do have opinions. You know, if they continue to eat sugar, there's just certain predictable somethings that will happen. If they continue to not set boundaries, there is a prognosis on that. It's not pretty. For most of the problems that you help people with, there's a place that will inevitably go if they don't deal with it. And of course, it's a sliding scale. It's not so black and white, but there are knowable things. If somebody comes to me and they say, Tad, I agree with you on the diagnosis. That I don't have my niche figured out, but I'm just going to ignore that. I'm not going to think about my niche, so thank you very much. There is a prognosis I can give. I mean, again, depending on how bad it is, but let's just say I'm just going to be everything to everybody. Okay, great. I can tell them fairly exactly where that goes. I've seen enough stories. I've seen enough case studies. If they want to say, Tad, this point of view thing is interesting, but I think I'm just going to, really focus on the pain point and just get them in the door and share the point of view after, I can point to where that goes, etc., etc. I could go through all 5 of the fundamentals that I cover at marketingforhippies.com/steps. And I can tell you the prognosis, but I can also tell you if you start to handle these things, here's where that likely goes. The point we're trying to get to here is we're just trying to be realistic, that's all. With the diagnosis, we're trying to be accurate, and with this, we're trying to be realistic. Not over the top, not sensationalizing. I think you understand. And then with the prescription, we're trying to say, here's what's needed. So again, diagnosis, what's happening? Prognosis, what's coming? But the diagnosis or the prescription, that's what's needed. Yeah. And you may notice that what's needed is not just information. There's 2 levels of the prescription. The first is, of course, people do need a certain amount of information to just wrap their heads around it. They probably need a deeper understanding of the diagnosis, but they also need other things. And you're probably already starting to think about the things that people need. Some people need community. Sometimes they need support of various kinds beyond just the information. And there's all kinds of supports forms of support that could take. But they do need some additional help. That's part of the prescription. And you probably have an opinion about the best kind of, hey, you need best kind of support. You need accountability, or accountability is ridiculous. You need this instead. So it's what you think is needed, yeah, for them in their situation. So all of this hinges on you've got some sort of a niche. Either there's a specific product that you make that you're trying to make the case for. In this case, the case is the diagnosis is, well, if they come to you with a product and it's not working, well, here's why. Because they made it wrong. Prognosis, yeah, well, if you don't fix that product, it will break down. It'll last about this long, and yeah, it'll probably break in this sort of circumstance. Again, those things are fairly knowable. And so what's needed? Well, you know, to make them in this way. Here's the idea. And if it's a service, well, they're trying to get from island A to island B. They're trying to solve some problem, you know, get to some result. So it's your diagnosis about why they can't get off island A, what's been holding them back, what their blind spots are, what spells they're under. It's your prognosis of what happens if you don't get off island A. And then it's the prescription of how to get from island A to island B. There's an immense amount to say about each of those three. But let me just say this: when you do an intro workshop, when you're interviewed, when you are writing a sales letter, at some level, hopefully robustly, those three cases need to be there. And in pretty much every piece of content you ever create, you will be making one or all of those three cases. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, about those three cases. I'm going to be going into this very deep in a webinar coming up, which I'll certainly let you all know about. And in my 6-week point of view marketing course, we'll be going into that quite deeply as well. So any questions you have, please put them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what comes up for you, any pushback, any disagreement, or anything that's not clear, because it's a new thing I'm talking about, so I would enjoy hearing how it lands for you. Thanks so much, everybody.